Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 126 for Monday, February 1st, 2021. My name is Joel Duggan, and joining me, as always, is my friend Jonny, but you probably know him better as PixelRefs. Hello, sir.
Hello! Yeah, we've had a really great discussion in our pre-show this week about what Joel has been playing lately on his brand new Xbox Series X, and a little bit about the Marvel Universe thrown in there for good measure. If you're interested in hearing some more about that, you can get the extended conversation by signing up to our Patreon. Patreon.com/thespawnchunks will get you access to our community and the render distance.
Speaking of our community, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the patrons who participated in the Q4 2020 quarterly hangout recorded this past Saturday on the weekend. That is where Jonny and I hang out once a quarter to discuss how the podcast is doing, download numbers, YouTube stuff, where we're going to take the show in the future, that kind of thing. That recording should be on the patron-only RSS feed now, so it should show up in your favorite podcaster or podcatcher, excuse me, and you should have access to that on the Patreon page if you are a patron.
Yeah, and it was great fun just to run down all of those facts and figures. There's some surprises in there as well, so hope you guys who were able to listen in enjoy going back through, and folks who weren't able to make it to the chat, hope you enjoy going through that stuff, because we put a lot of effort in behind the scenes into figuring out where the show is going and stuff, so hopefully that's enjoyable for all of you. But let's get into the fun stuff for everybody else. Joel, what have you been doing in Minecraft this week?
So I have been working on the keep, the medieval keep in the medieval area on the Citadel, and this has been weeks. I think I'm on. I named my VODs on Twitch. I think I'm on 11, and it's just this particular building. So it's been many hours so far. But things are starting to come together. We're now into the part where we're putting roofs on things. We're making sure hallways match up and flow into one another. I've completed the wall around the outside of the keep, taken that all the way down to the ground in most places, and it's starting to feel a lot more like a cohesive build, less like a framed structure with like, this will look good when it's done, and I think I know what that's going to look like, and all that kind of thing. And there's been some happy accidents along the way. There's been some towers that have been added and then have been raised to be twice as high as they were originally. There's been a tower that's been removed / transformed into either a barracks or maybe like a servant's quarters or something. And the end result has been that it now looks a lot more like a complex. It looks a little bit more like a series of buildings within a wall as opposed to just one building with a wall around it. And I've been really happy with it. I'm also running into some issues with lighting. It's kind of shone that light on the, I don't want my build to be covered in carpet or covered in torches, yet I also don't want creepers dropping on me from above. Cue the heart attack I had on stream the other day. It didn't blow up on me, but I jumped out of my chair. Like it was priceless. So yeah, I've done some things with the rafters where I've put buttons on them to keep them from being spawnable, and you can't see the buttons because the rafters are 20 blocks above your head.
Yeah,
so like
sure.
So it's fine. I even put redstone dust there, knowing that it has no profile and you can't see it from any angle, and it still bugged me. So I went up and I put buttons there. It was one of those things, like redstone dust in the rafters, just kind of, it felt wrong. So yeah, so I'm running into that kind of stuff. But the thing that I'm really happy about with this build is that I'm making sure that staircases lead to second floors that sometimes even I can get. If I've got a wall and I've got a battlement, I want access. Like, where do you go up to that? Where is the staircase for that? Is it in the tower? Is it next to the tower? Do you have multiple ways to get in and out of a building? Which we do. And that to me has been the real kind of point of pride with this, is that I've been designing it sort of from the inside out, right? So that you always have room to flex and do some things. And the best decision I made was making the walls of the main keep 3 blocks thick, because it has allowed for some seriously nice design things like deep windows. The front door's got like a recessed part to it. Like it's really worked out quite well.
Yeah, I was doing some more building in the museum on my streams this week, and I had a couple of people ask me, like, why are you leaving a gap between the walkway, the sort of, path around the biome exhibit that I'm planning right now, and the neighboring room. Like there's like basically a strip of grass between the path and the wall. And I said it's because I plan on expanding the wall outwards, and if I don't leave myself space to do that, I'm not going to be able to put any detail into it whatsoever. And a 1 block thick wall, even though, as we've discussed previously on the show, that's still a meter thick, which seems unrealistic by real life standards, but in Minecraft terms, you can't really do much thinner, so I really need to leave myself the space, and it's very smart to do that ahead of time, especially with a build like this, where you know that you're mostly working with the same block palette. It's mainly kind of stone and wood kind of stuff, so you need depth to really register any kind of detail in what you're building, otherwise from a distance it's all going to look plain and flat.
Yeah, and I'm struggling now with the proportions where I want this to look like a big important build, but I built the front gate to the town and the rear gate to the town before I built this thing, and so I'm trying to make sure it at least rivals those things.
Yeah.
And even though it's farther away, like the front gate is always going to look bigger because it's the first thing that you see, you're going to be closer to it, right? But I'm trying to make sure that this gets enough, I don't want to say decoration, but it has enough oomph, I guess, or enough of a unique silhouette, or it looks to be not necessarily larger, but has a different, more important vibe to it. I'm hoping the wall
it's got to
and
have
everything
like
around it.
It's got to have presence. It's got to have
Yes.
like gravitas.
Yeah. So, and the thing that I know that's missing from the build right now, and that's because of my lack of knowledge in this area in Minecraft, is that I want to hang some banners. Like I want to make a custom banner for like the faction or town or something. I haven't gotten that far yet. So I haven't added any color at all. And I'm not a fan of like making flags out of wool blocks. You see that a lot in builds like this, and it's not the right scale for me. Like I've made this player scale, and so flags like that just don't really work that well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to put like a banner of some sort. I'm not sure what I'm going to come up with, but I'd like to hang them like, on either side of the door. I'm just thinking of all the stuff that I've seen in like Lego castles growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a spot for a map wall inside the main hall, which I think should be really cool. I'll do, traditional Minecraft map of the area and just hope that I can find a way to center it in that, because I haven't paid attention to where I've been building these as far as a map goes, so I don't know what it's actually going to look like. But it could be interesting to see what we can come up with.
I think in the same way that there should be, or I say should, that there is a gap in Minecraft builders sort of library of things to put in, where like a 3 block wide door would be really handy for certain larger builds, so you don't have to put like a single or double door. You could have a door that it opens on one side but is 3 blocks wide. For castle gates and stately homes and that kind of thing. I feel like there is also a gap in the palette for a 3 block wide and 4 block tall banner. I think that'd be so good, considering like you can fit a lot of detail onto these 1x2 banners, but if you want something that really scales to the size of a castle without having to build your banner out of blocks manually and still getting the same level of detail with the different shapes and stuff that you can add to it, the different heraldic elements for a banner, I think it would really be nice to have something that fit over more like a 3x4 space.
I have a trick actually for that 3 wide door that works quite well. If you can let your brain forgive some math. So you create the 3 wide door opening, and then you use either doors or trapdoors. I used spruce trapdoors because they work quite well together, to create open doors on either side. And you make both of those doors 2 blocks long and like say 3 blocks tall. And so if you ever close them, they would overlap in the middle by a block. So it wouldn't make sense. Like that's not how a real door would be designed. But when you're walking through, if they're both open, your brain doesn't really look at it. It just kind of looks at it and goes like, yeah, those look wide enough to close over this opening. And then you just kind of go on. And I found it's been a nice cheat, because I really don't like 2 wide builds or 2 block centered builds. It does drive me a little bit nuts sometimes, because of the need for a door, or the I guess easy way to design things inside in Minecraft, where you want to usually have things like a table in the center, that kind of stuff. That's that's a lot easier on a single wide, single centered build. So what you mentioned you've been working on the survival guide museum. Like, has there been much progress there?
Yeah, I'm still working on the exhibit about all of the different biomes, and for the sake of simplicity, I have omitted some of the ones which are just like terrain variants of the same thing. So like I've not done I've done a forest biome diorama, but I haven't done one for Forest Hills M, all of the kind of the extra bits and pieces. But then a flower forest is going to be significantly different. I've basically been restricting it to anywhere that you can find unique blocks or items that you can't really find anywhere else. And so I have now about 12 or 13 of these built, and it goes from plains through to swamp and jungle and savanna and a couple of mesa biomes. And I've left some larger plots for the biomes that I really can't avoid putting in a larger scale. So things like mountains, for example, like just putting down some stone and gravel and a couple of grass blocks is not really going to say mountain in the same way that building something that actually has terrain is going to be. But so far, a lot of the other biomes have fit into 5x15 plots. And 5 blocks wide is not quite enough to contain some of the larger trees, thinking specifically of stuff like jungle and acacia trees that have a much broader crown to them. But I managed to basically trim those down a little bit, so they do get cut off, but it still gives the same impression from ground level, which is where most people are going to be observing these things from. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with them so far. My most recent one was reproducing an ice spikes biome with one smaller and one of those sort of Empire State Building looking, spires of ice. And I really like the way that one came together. To get the most accurate picture of these possible, I actually went around with the replay mod and recorded a bunch of footage from each biome. I would have just taken a bunch of screenshots, but I also wanted to do something for an element to have for the video. And I play that back while I'm working on the biomes so that I can see exactly what's there. And there's some stuff that pops out of that surprises me, like the fact that on irregular plains you have 5 or 6 different types of flowers that grow there naturally, but then if you go to an ice plains, which is effectively just a plains biome covered in snow with different trees, you still only get dandelions and poppies, for example. So that's the kind of detail I want to go into, making sure that each biome diorama has a good spread of the kind of stuff that you will find there without going into stuff like structures, because obviously in a 5x15 plot, I'm not going to be able to fit in like examples of a plains village or something like that. And I'm really going for what you can be guaranteed to find if you go to that biome. So yeah, I'm having fun with it. It's a fun little project. One thing I did run into at one point was the fact that the plots I had laid out, I had one left over that was probably going to be for an ocean that I just didn't think the oceans were different enough that I needed to lay that out, but it would make the exhibit kind of uneven. What I ended up doing was creating a viewing area for the side of the ocean exhibit, and this is set into the floor so that you can see, you're standing on the shore of this ocean and it goes maybe 5 or 6 blocks down with kelp growing up and stuff. What I ended up doing was digging a hole next to that and having effectively like an aquarium-style glass wall that you could just look at this from the side, and then you get to see all of the kelp and seagrass up close. And you can imagine like parents sort of standing back while kids are like pressing their noses up to the glass to see if they can spot a fish, that kind of thing. So I'm having fun with it. It's going really well so far.
Are you going to do the same thing on the opposite side of what looks like a hallway here in the really cool screenshot that you shared with our live listeners for like a coral reef? Same idea, like you can go down and very cool.
Yeah, I definitely want to do that. And the coral reef is going to have a little bit more detail you can see from the surface, thanks to the fact that it's going to be lit by sea pickles as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is going to be nice to have a few elements like that thrown in. And yeah, the back row that I have yet to complete is some of the more interesting biomes of the lot. It's things like flower forests, mushroom fields, warm ocean, the ice spikes that I've done, and yeah, there's a few others that I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into building this week. Outside of that, in the RTX series, I just raided a bastion for the first time, which was something that I was a little bit worried about, but it went better than I expected, mainly because I don't think Piglin Brutes hit nearly as hard on Bedrock Edition as they do on Java. But there was a treasure bastion really close to my spawn point as I came into the Nether for the first time. I found that long before I haven't even found a Nether fortress yet. So I basically decided that's the priority as far as exploring the Nether goes, is to get geared up and raid one of these for the treasure. Found myself a good bit of loot, but just seeing anything in Minecraft RTX uplit by lava is really impressive to begin with, but the scale of the bastions and the fact that everything is bathed in this, really intense orange light from the lava pool at the bottom of the world, it is really quite special. And you sort of feel the atmosphere, you feel the heat a lot more, even though there's no sort of heat haze effect rising off the lava or anything. It still feels pretty intense being in there and having that kind of red glow on all of the piglins as you're running around there. So I managed to escape with a decent amount of gold and a little bit of diamond loot and ancient debris. And yeah, had a good time raiding the Bastion. I think I'm probably going to end up incorporating it into a Nether hub when I continue that series. So I'm looking forward to doing some more with that.
Any plans with the, I'm assuming it's a magma cube spawner?
Yeah, I think that's probably going to end up being a long-term farm. And I've got some farm designs that I'm not certain. I'll have to test in Bedrock. I'm not certain if they work because I built them in Java initially. But yeah, magma cubes in Bedrock Edition are more difficult. It kind of balances out the piglin brute because when they split up for the first time, they bounce around really fast. And a lot of the time that can... that leads to very unpredictable movement if you're used to the slightly more kind of sedate movement of magma cubes on Java. They calm down after a few bounces, but they're really tricky to handle up close. So yeah, I'm a little bit worried about getting the magma cube spawner sorted out, but I will probably do it at some point because it's too good an opportunity to pass up at this point.
Yeah, man. I mean, that it looks great, and I can only imagine the level of immersion that RTX in the Nether, no matter where you are, just kind of brings to the game.
Yeah. The only problem is the level of obscurity it brings to my YouTube videos because the extra fog and all of the extra kind of like the light and darkness provides such a contrast that YouTube has trouble processing a lot of the darker and foggier areas.
Yeah.
And people are having. I'm encouraging people to watch in 4K or as close to 4K as your system can allow, because otherwise it's just going to be compressed to all hell. And yeah, I feel bad about that, but there's not really a whole lot I can do beyond boosting the gamma a little bit when I edit the video.
Sidebar, dude, I just realized that I can tune into your YouTube videos on my new TV. Well, there's going to be some RTX watching happening in the near future. Speaking of the new TV, by the way, I didn't spend a lot of time, but I spent some time in Minecraft Dungeons this week, which everybody on the show is just like, what? Joel did what? Keep in mind that I haven't returned to Dungeons since I could not complete my first attempt at the final boss in the main game playthrough, the Arch-Illager. And I like it. I do want to play the game, but at the moment, cross saves are not live yet. So I can't bring all of the stuff that I've done, bring another character or whatever to the Xbox and play it. That's okay because there's a number of people that I want to play with on the Xbox that are new to the game in general, and I would prefer to start a new character with them anyway, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
However, I did just kind of like open it up. I'll just poke around in this and see what happens. 45 minutes later, I'm still going through Creeper Woods, and there's a little bit of an aim assist that happens with the bow and arrow. It's not as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Obviously it's really smooth and really fun. For a challenge for myself to make it really interesting and get the most out of the little window I had to play, I took the difficulty level up to like whatever the max was, like 3 or something. Going into like Creeper Woods for the first time with like nothing but I had a firecracker rocket and a fishing rod and I think a sword that did 16 damage. So like I died once, which was surprising. I was expecting more. Creepers are serious business on difficulty 3.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'll one-shot you if you're not careful. It was pretty impressive, the number of mobs and stuff that are out there. I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. The one thing that I find, I'm curious about this with you, and that's why I bring it up, because I of course play on the PC, or most of my playtime has been on the PC with a mouse point and click to shoot the bad guys sort of idea. This is my first time playing Dungeons with a controller. And now this could be the other games I'm playing. But I always hit X to try and swing my sword.
Mm-hmm.
Always. That's not the right button.
Yeah.
The button is A. And in platformers, A is jump. And in
Yeah.
in other games like Batman, A is jump and X is punch. And in Ori, X is your attack button. So I don't know whether I'm just programmed by the other two games that I've been playing, or whether it just makes more sense to have the X button be the swing your sword button in Minecraft. However, the artifact buttons, which are X, Y, and B across the top of your controller, make total sense in terms of like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, that's where I would want those to be. So I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should customize the controller and switch it to X for sword, or whether I should just leave it and try to get used to it. Did you change anything about your default controller setup in Dungeons?
I did not, and I appreciate that it is a little difficult to get the hang of using a controller for the first time, especially if you've been used to mouse and keyboard. Where I think, is it space to roll? I think there's something along those lines.
Yes.
So it feels like, maneuverability wise, it's not that different to Minecraft, even though there is no jumping in Minecraft dungeons. Like the only thing you can really do is roll. And yeah, I don't know. I'm more used to that arcadey style of gameplay, and yeah, it did get me. It took me a little while to get used to it, and I'd probably be a little bit rusty if I went back into it right away. But I think it's the kind of thing that just with a couple of play sessions, you'll get used to it. But yeah, I mean, if the opportunity is there to rebind your controls, then worth giving it a go.
The thing that I find tricky with the rolling and the controller is one of them is like you have to deep press the directional stick, I think, like the left joypad. Because you can roll in the direction you're facing, or there's or you can roll.
Yeah, if you
in the way
press
you press the button,
the bumper rolls whatever direction you're facing, and then I think you can move the right stick to roll in a different direction, so you can dodge roll in different directions if you're using the stick that way.
Right.
But I never bothered with that.
Right.
I never found the dodge roll like so useful that I would need to dodge backwards while I was facing forwards. Like I just didn't get into the movement of it that much. I was too busy hitting stuff.
The other thing that I realized is that on the keyboard and mouse setup, you have to, I think it's shift, and shift allows you to stay in place while you swing your sword. Right?
You root yourself in one spot. Yeah.
You don't need that in the controller.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I was just like, how come I can't? Like I was like 15 minutes trying to figure out like, where's the root button? Like, how come I can't? And I realized, oh, dummy, you don't need it because you're not clicking around the screen to move, right? As well as clicking on enemies. And so that once I kind of wrapped my head around a couple of different things, it was really, really cool. Obviously with, the new TV and the Xbox Series X, like it's very pretty. And still run into some stuff where like I would wish that the way that you go under tree cover would be different. I would prefer to see myself rather than a silhouette. But those are all things I've talked about the game before. But I'm looking forward to maybe. I mean, that might be the new home for Minecraft Dungeons for me. Like, I think I might prefer the couch experience, with the exception, of course, whenever I want to stream it for something different on Twitch. But that's where I'm hoping the cross saves will come in, and where I could maybe game for a bit on my own, play on the couch, do whatever, and then the next time I want to stream it, I could just pick up where it left off on the computer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really designed to be a kind of arcadey style, play on the couch kind of game to begin with. And so, as streamers, we are sort of in the minority of player base. We'll see. Before we get away from Minecraft Dungeons and move into the news, I did want to say that having hung around the Minecraft Dungeons speedrunning community a bit recently, the world record for beating Minecraft Dungeons without the new level skip glitch they discovered recently was broken basically last night. So the previous record, I believe, was 28 minutes and 32 seconds. Somebody's managed to complete the game now in 27 minutes and 13 seconds.
Wow.
And if anyone's familiar with the format of most speedruns now, they will have a timer that kind of calculates the sort of different splits between segments, so like how long it takes them to complete each individual level, and they'll have individual timers for both, as well as an overall timer that calculates the length of the run. And yeah, like a few of those like splits and stuff were like record breaking in themselves. It was like the fastest anyone's ever completed that individual level. But even then, the sum of this speedrunner's best segments still indicates that they could have shaved maybe like a minute or so off of their time. So getting like runs in like the 26 and 25 sort of range, like 25 minutes or so, are still possible. Like they've effectively proven that it is doable. They've just got to get the right level geometry to generate when they spawn in for it to be like the fastest possible route through the level.
Wow.
It's a really fascinating thing. Like I found myself diving more and more into speedrunning with Minecraft Dungeons in particular now that I've been like hosting events and hanging out in their Discord a little bit more. It's a fun time.
I'm looking forward to exploring the camp a little bit more now because I've not been back since they've made all the changes to it.
Oh
And-
yeah. No,
and
there's 5 villagers there now.
Yeah.
A lot has changed since the first patch.
Well, even just the first merchant that I got, I was able to see what he was selling, and so
Mhm.
I bought a glaive after completing Creeper Woods. Like, that's a win. I'll take that because it took me forever to get one of those in my first playthrough, and I
Mhm.
like them. They're one of my favorite weapons.
They're very, very fun to use, those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they make a really good swish sound. I know it's a weird thing to kind of glom onto, but like I really like the swing.
Oh yeah, no, like the combination of sound design and like some of the effects they put on that stuff just makes it a very satisfying game to play.
Yeah.
And I think they've really done a great job of making it feel good to hack your way through Minecraft Dungeons.
It shouldn't sound so violent. Oh, that's great. Moving on into the news, we have a little bit of news coming in from the Bedrock section of Minecraft. We've got copper and lightning rods now in Bedrock Beta. You can find the link to that article on Minecraft.net in our show notes with the full changelog. Notable differences from Java include a 64 block protection radius provided by the lightning rod, which is 32 blocks on Java. Copper can be waxed by right-clicking on it using a honeycomb or using a dispenser loaded with honeycomb. Copper variants can be crafted using a stone cutter, and Drowned are now dropping copper ingots instead of gold ingots in Bedrock Edition. How do you feel about this, man? Because this sounds like good news for everybody.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we see some of these copper changes and additions in Java. Aside from the points Joel just read, the copper implementation and the lightning rod are pretty much the same as they are in Java for Bedrock players, and I've not been able to get into the Bedrock beta because my whole setup is now on the current like full release for RTX stuff, and I don't really want to go switching back and forth. But yeah, right-clicking to wax an already placed copper block is a big enough quality of life upgrade on its own, but then you can also automate it with dispensers, and that of course means observer-dispenser interaction. If you detect the copper block weathering using an observer, then a dispenser can automatically wax it for you. That's great. That's what we've really wanted for copper from the beginning. And obviously it doesn't necessarily take into account the next stage of weathering, but maybe you have like an observer circuit that waits for 2 outputs before it. I don't know, like there's a couple of different options, and my redstone brain is starting to tick over with a lot of it now. Automating with dispensers is a godsend, and I really hope that ends up in Java. I think that'd be a really good change, and it would surprise me if they didn't, because I don't think this is one of those changes that like is really going to be helpful specifically for mobile players, or the other stuff that we see being, you know, a compromise on Bedrock Edition for parity versus just accessibility for the different medium that you play it in, the different console platform or mobile platform. So I really think I want to see stuff like that in Java. We've got farming ingots from the Drowned is something we've mentioned on the show before, and making copper renewable is, while I've seen some pushback about this, about it being too easy to obtain copper, and the idea being that, you know, you want to go caving for copper because they've updated caves, and so it's kind of more of an encouragement to go caving. And, you know, you can flood a zombie spawner if you want to get the Drowned. But if you think about it, there's still got to be some level to which copper becomes renewable just for active multiplayer servers. The amount of people who are going to be going out looking for copper on a server where everybody wants to build with the new stuff, you're just not going to be able to find it anywhere near spawn or within a good radius of spawn for a while. after a server resets. So yeah, I really think there's an effort reward balance at play. And, maybe if the drown drop copper a little bit less, just to balance it out, a little bit less than they do gold. But even then, it's like making an iron farm with a zombie spawner. You can still do it, but nobody does because there are better ways of doing it. So I'm interested to see what the balance is like for people who play that long term instead of just having a knee-jerk reaction of, well, farming this means nobody will ever go caving again.
I agree. I think that, where Mojang often talks about parity between the two versions. I feel like changes like the drop in copper, that's something you could do right now with a data pack, I think, if you wanted to, right? Like you can change the drop table for any mob. That's how the Skyblock series works, right? Like they do that with
the drown drop clay in that. The zombies drop gravel. There's some loot tables you can adjust fairly easily from what I understand, and it makes the whole thing a lot more accessible.
So, I mean, I would expect these changes to come to Java. I don't speak for Mojang, but I mean, I would also imagine, and this is just a joke / idea, that the PR department at Mojang is like, you're going to bring this over, right? You're not going to let this hang and have the Java community come at us, be like, why do they have it over here when not over on Java? So I would expect that the parity would probably come through. And I mean, like you can solve that it's too easy to get copper problem by just making it like you said, like not a frequent drop, right? Have it drop enough for it to be worth it to make a zombie spawner into a drown spawner, but not have it be, easy mode,
Yeah.
I think also when I find a zombie spawner, I think, I mean, if I'm at the very beginning of a game, it might be a little bit of fun XP, but I don't need anything from it. I certainly don't know what the heck to do with all the rotten flesh. However, spider spawners, early game, I really want string. So I'm more than likely going to turn a spider spawner into an XP string farm. You still need spider eyes for certain things. Like there's a lot of stuff that you can get. Same with the skeleton spawner. Bones. Like everybody needs bone meal when you're doing building and farming and all that kind of stuff. So having the zombies or drowned, drop copper and using a zombie spawner to turn it into a drowned spawner, that's not necessarily an early game thing, but it's a cool mid game thing, and it gives zombie spawners a much higher potential for like, oh, that's exciting. I want one of these now, right?
I would agree. I always try and go for a skeleton spawner if I have a choice.
Yes.
And so, zombie spawners are kind of bottom of the barrel for me too. And so, I think the ability to waterlog that. And you still got to be there to kill the drowned yourself because, like, player kills are the only things that get those rare drops. Mm-hmm. So, you need to put a little bit of thought into the way you're going to design that stuff for sure.
How do you feel about the stonecutter using or being used to chop up copper blocks?
See, this is the controversial one for me because copper is not stone, and this is the first instance we have of the justification for the stonecutter being the stonecutter falling away. And a lot of people have said, why can't we use the stonecutter to cut up wood because they want a better crafting equivalence for stairs, because obviously stairs can be 1-to-1 in a stonecutter, whereas you're still getting 6 blocks in for 4 stairs out when you make stairs out of any other material. And now the stonecutter is cutting something other than stone. If it's cutting copper, that's good because copper, as we know, is going to be a little bit difficult to get hold of in larger quantities, and so you probably don't want to make too many copper stairs if you're getting that same exchange rate. For copper, if you're getting 6 blocks into 4 blocks out, you might be a little bit more reticent to make stairs. The stonecutter opens that up, which is great because sometimes you're only going to want to make a couple of stair blocks. But it's also potentially opening up the stonecutter to have the precedent to cut other things, at which point, should it still be called the stonecutter? I'm not sure. I think it is. It's good gameplay though, right? I think that's something we can both agree on. It's probably a benefit all around.
I would agree. I think it's good gameplay. I don't think it makes a lot of sense in terms of the name of the thing, but the name of the thing can change. Like like you don't have to call it the stone cutter. You could call it the cutter. You could call it the
the buzzsaw.
The buzzsaw. Yeah, you can call it all kinds of stuff. Table saw. We have a crafting table. Maybe we have a cutting table. just
Yeah.
to kind of keep with the Minecraft vernacular. I already use the stone cutter for wood. We made a data pack that I'm still in the process of putting the final touches on the Citadel using crafting.thedestruction.ca. I'll have a link in the show notes because destruction is spelt kind of funny. And it's a WYSIWYG editor online where you can create your own data pack. You can download it, and it made it very easy to wrap your head around creating some slightly different crafting recipes. And you don't have to just use the stone cutter. You could use the crafting table. You could use the furnaces, blast furnaces, all that kind of stuff. But what I've done is I've changed the crafting table to be able to use logs or planks of the various types of wood in the game to then pump out the related item. I have changed some recipes because the Citadel, we're a bunch of adults that are very busy and we wanted an easier way to get trapdoors and stairs. So it's 1-to-1 for stairs, which is better than, say, the wood stair recipe that you get in the crafting table. Trapdoors are definitely better because 6 planks in for 2 trapdoors out was not okay with me. So I switched it to 1 plank equals 1 trapdoor. And that's a little bit of a skew towards, an easier way to get stuff. On the reverse, actually, instead of using the exact ratio for doors, it's actually more expensive to do doors because 1 log will get you 4 doors on my data pack. And technically, you should be getting like a door, and you should be getting 1 door for every 3 blocks or something like that. Or no, 2 blocks.
Yeah. It's like you get 3 doors out for 6 blocks in. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So what I've done is I've got 2 doors out for 2 blocks in. So maybe it isn't even trade. Anyway, I've always found 3 doors to be a pain in the butt because I use 2 and then I have an extra door. There's always an extra door in my inventory. It's like, why do I need this? Anyway, I don't think it's a stretch. I think a lot of people probably that take advantage of data packs on servers are probably doing this anyway. Because outside of the trapdoor, all I'm doing is making it more convenient. I'm not really changing the ratios. Like slabs are still the same, planks to logs are still the same. I don't do any fences, like nothing like that is in there. So it's all really straightforward. And if you wanted to, you could do the math and just make sure that the ratios coming in are what's coming, match what's going out, that sort of stuff. But I'm curious because copper on the stone cutter makes me wonder, like, well, would that mean other metal blocks or other non-stone blocks could be on there, not just wood? Like, but we don't have variants yet of smooth stone, cough, cough, of say iron. It would be cool to have iron stairs, iron slabs. What about, smooth stone stairs and slabs? I think there's some potential there. Again, I think it just opens up this floodgate of like, well, how far down this road are they going to go?
Yeah, it's the slippery slope argument applied to this kind of stuff. And to be honest, I'd be fine with just copper being as it was. Like, I didn't really need the stone cutter functionality to be there, but if they decide to bring that over from Bedrock to Java, then I do think it's going to save people a couple of copper blocks if they just want to make a couple of stairs. I think that's a fairly harmless change. We're just overthinking it, as we tend to do on the show. Is there anything else we need to cover before we move on from the news?
I just wanted to give a quick shout out to an article that just kind of caught my eye on Minecraft.net, and it is about the one map 11-person build team that built Divine Dreams, which is a cumulative effort from the team to create what would look like something that you'd find on top of Mount Olympus. It's a beautiful, complicated build. I can only imagine the kind of communication that would have to happen between the build team to make this possible. There's not really much to say about it in terms of like, you can go read the article for yourself. But boy, oh boy, is it beautiful. Like, I often struggle with building so much gray in my medieval zone, and I feel like it's getting boring, and I'm always trying to struggle to pop things out with terrible term, but like you need some contrast in your builds. And they balance some light gray roofs with all the white marble type texture, with a little bit of trees, a little bit of green. Obviously, it's on some water and stuff. But like, it is a stunning piece of artwork in Minecraft, and I would highly encourage people to check out the show notes, look at the Divine Dreams article on Minecraft.net, and see what screenshots, maybe even some videos you can find of this, because my gosh, is it pretty.
Yeah, the thing that always fascinates me about this is that it's all very well looking at all of these lovely renders that people have done, and they've credited the folks who rendered these screenshots at the bottom of the Minecraft.net post, but when the build team is working on this, they're still working with the restrictions of normal Minecraft. And so there's going to be render distances to take into account and things fading into the fog and not loading for them when they're working on individual pieces. And so, like, they've got to have the vision to think ahead to what it's going to look like as a finished product when you apply all of these, lovely rendering techniques and stuff to showcase the full build in all its glory. And that itself must be a fairly difficult hurdle to overcome, not being able to look at the entire thing in the same way that we are as an audience now looking at it. I think it's fascinating the work that goes into this stuff individually, and also obviously the builders involved know what they're doing to the nth degree, but it's still just kind of fascinating having to put all of this stuff together without any real knowledge of what the full build is going to look like until they begin the rendering process after it's all done.
I wonder how much of that is iterative. Like, do you do a couple of renders midway? Do you render out, like, I wonder if there would be a tool to render out like an image of, say, like one of these large towers in the background, and if while you're working you could have like a projection of that, kind of like in the distance or in the game, that's always visible in terms of a wireframe. So even if you can't see all the details, you could still see the silhouette of, like, okay, there's where the peak of this tower is. I want to make sure that I'm not blocking that, or that I'm framing it correctly, and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot more insight too on the One Map Twitter account. They have that linked in the article as well. I'd encourage people to go check that out.
Moving on to emails. If you'd like to email the show and get your email potentially read on a future episode, the email address is spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. We've got an email here from Prowl, who is a landscape artist member of our Discord, along with a creator in his own right, I believe. And the subject here, following on from last week's discussion, is glow dye. Hey Pix and Joel, love the latest episode of the podcast. Okay, I love them all. And I have an idea to add some functionality to the glow ink sacks that would be a great addition to the game, and I think relevant to this latest snapshot. So glow squids drop these glow ink sacks, which we could then be able to combine with dye of any color to make glow dye of that color. We could then take that colored glow dye and combine it into either the recipe to create a sea lantern or end rod, or with the sea lantern and end rod itself, turning the sea lantern or end rod block model that color and having it emit that shade of light. I think using only these two blocks for this functionality makes sense. Since these light sources are white, it would make sense that their components could be dyed to change their color and the color of their light. I think Mojang could either make the decision to keep the light level emitted the same as it is currently, or make it so darker color dyes lower the amount of light emitted versus lighter colors emitting a higher light level. Thanks for the continued entertainment, information, and insight from your show, and keep up the great work. Prowl. So, you don't need to sell me on colored light sources, Prowl. I've been there. I've been there, I've seen it, and it's a very good thing. And as we know, colored light is one of the things that I've wanted in vanilla Minecraft for a while. And I think for this discussion, I'm going to suspend my usual argument against this in vanilla, which is probably just it's really difficult to program for vanilla lighting. But let's suspend that argument for a while, because I think it's more fun to imagine what it'd be like if this was implemented into the game. And yeah, I think colored lighting would really add a lot to just any environmental building that you were doing. And I think having the glow squid be part of that would make the glow squid like super relevant to builders' gameplay in general. How do you feel about colored lighting, Joel?
Yeah, I think this would be a great idea. I mean, even if it's just changing the color of the block model, like just to have a yellow end rod for, I mean, insert any kind of like modern use for like traffic light, or lights in a tunnel, when you're going under an overpass or something like that. Having things like that be colored instead of being just white, just open up the doors to all kinds of creativity. I'm seeing a lot of trends, with the LEDs that I've bought for my home behind my TV and in my studio, the popularity of Cyberpunk 2077 and Minecraft RTX. Like there just seems to be a lot of neon and glowy stuff happening in video games right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like having colored light, while it might be trendy, I'm okay with Mojang getting on board with this trend. Like that would be very cool. I try to mimic this a lot in my Nether builds, where I'll bury a light source in the ground to shine up from below. To talk to your point earlier about things in the Nether being lit by lava from below, and then I call it glazing for the lack of a better way to describe it. I'll put colored glass over a wall so you can't see where the glass begins. I have a connected glass texture pack, so that helps a considerable amount. But you can turn a wall to have like a pink hue or a red hue or a yellow hue. And I find that kind of like goes part way with creating that kind of colored light idea. The ability to change the color of sea lanterns and netherons, I think would just be fantastic. I don't know about the part where you dive into changing the light level coming from these blocks depending on what color they are, because that then limits the player in terms of like, well, if I want a purple block that's light, like a purple sea lantern, but I want a bright purple sea lantern, I can't have one, right? Because that would make all purple and all blue and black all low light levels, and then anything bright would be the yellows and the oranges and stuff like that, and vice versa. Like if you wanted to put like a red lamp in a room and you didn't want it to emit light level 15, you'd be stuck, so having them all emit the same light level as the source block that they're coming from, I think is good. I wonder if there's a way to just make it a little bit more feasible. And again, like it also opens up the floodgates of like, what other kind of things, if you're going to be able to use dyes to dye things that we couldn't dye before, like how many other things can you use dye on? Because I know that there was the what was it called, the World of Color update?
That was 1.12. Well, that was
yeah, I feel like the World of Color update maybe needs a little love, because we've and I want to give a shout out to Ethan Z and Disco Creeper for sending in emails very similar to this one this week. Same sort of idea with regards to dye, glow squid, colored light, that kind of thing. And it just seems like it's something that players are talking about a lot, but not just talking about in a whimsical like, I really want this, make it happen. There's a lot of thought going into these emails that we're getting about colored light. Like people are like, I want this and I want to present this in a way that's potentially feasible for Mojang to consider it as feedback, and I appreciate that. I think that's it speaks to the seriousness of the desire for this kind of stuff in the game.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said for just adding different like texture packs to stuff. I feel like is something that you can do ordinarily, but having it be supported by the vanilla game is something that's so desirable for people. Like you could retexture sea lanterns or glowstone or whatever any way you want. And even in the RTX pack that I'm using, in Kelly's RTX, there is effectively an extra set of blocks that you can use for lighting in all colors of the rainbow if you also enable Education Edition features and just use some of the blocks that are normally intended for stuff like that, and you just kind of bring those in because they don't really have any function for what we think of as generic vanilla survival Minecraft. You can pull from that all the time, and just having those blocks at your disposal is really nice. But I think having a vanilla integration of this kind of thing could be really cool. And I'm still crossing my fingers down the line that the technical stuff can be sorted out, and that is the direction Minecraft can take, because I think just having worked with a little bit of light for a while, I lit up my enchanting room inside of the house that I built as my kind of starter mansion in the RTX world. I lit the enchanting room in blue, and you just get a completely different vibe. Like suddenly it feels like this is where the magic happens,
Yeah.
And I like that stuff a lot. Even if it's not necessarily like fully realistic lighting, like God rays coming from the sun and reflections and all that kind of stuff. Just a simple glow in an unnatural color of light like green or a really vibrant purple or something can really add a lot to a build that you wouldn't expect if you'd been playing regular vanilla Minecraft for a long time.
I think too that when I look at these kind of changes and people bring up texture packs, I think, well, that's sure, I can change it with a texture pack, but I'm always sacrificing a block when I do that.
Yeah, sure,
Right. Like,
sure.
so a good example is that I've been thinking about using some custom stained glass textures in the medieval area on the Citadel, because it would be nice to have that like iron worked stained glass kind of like texture,
Yeah.
and not have it look like smooth modern glass all the time. And the problem there is that I very often have to go back to other builds in the world to get stone, to get andesite, to replenish my stocks and get more chicken or whatever. And it's a fun little server tour or mini walk through the server. And I get a lot of compliments when I walk through my Nether hub, which has got a glass floor on it. Which, if I didn't remember to turn off the texture pack before I go through the portal, would look like it would have medieval texture on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, there's that kind of a thing where, like, with a vanilla supported ability to dye things like end rods or sea lanterns or glowstone, you'd have a lot more player control that would not rely on a texture pack being swapped in or out for either different areas, different builds, that sort of stuff.
I'm trying to remember if the Quark mod did different color light sources, because it sounds like the kind of thing that would have been added as like a vanilla plus addition to Minecraft, is having a bunch of light sources of different colors. I'm fairly certain there are at least like blaze lanterns instead of sea lanterns that were like sea lantern stuff but made out of blaze powder and blaze rods, and
right,
just like a slightly different color to fit in with different types of builds. But yeah, I do wonder if stuff like this has been added in mods before, and I'm just scrolling through. There's the ability to craft a permanently lit redstone lamp as well in there, and I'm just like, yeah, why hasn't that been done? I also feel like if they introduced colored light, it'd be really great for stuff like the new candles they're adding in 1.17,
yep,
which are a feature I almost always forget about until I'm just reminded of them by something else. If those could emit slightly different colors of light, that'd be really neat, except in instances where you're like, I don't want the room to be lit up bright green, but I would like to use green candles here, you know? So, yeah, I think having it be controlled by the player has to be the solution to that, unless you create a light source from scratch that is specialized into having different colors of light.
Well, I think that makes sense in that, you know, a torch is going to give off, you know, if we're talking color light, a torch is going to give off orange light. A soul fire torch is going to give off a blue light. You know, candles, they have an orange flame, so they would all give off the same kind of orangish light.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
if
exactly.
you're dying the actual sea lantern and the block itself is like red, green, blue, purple, whatever, then you'd have a better control over it, and it would make sense, you know, like the things that you would expect to, because the wax in the candle is not what's giving off the light, it's the flame.
Yeah.
And I think that would be, yeah, I like the idea. Again, like it gets into like, where do you put the limit on that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the slippery slope argument always kind of starts to trickle in as we go. It's like, if we can dye this, then why not everything else in the game?
I want dyed planks so bad.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the discussion this week, we actually have an email that kind of kicked this off, and it is from Beyonder, Players Over Time. Hi, Jonny and Joel. I have been playing Minecraft for a long time, since early 2012. One of the largest changes I have noticed is the change in how players play the game. As I see younger generations get into the game, I see the play of the game get much different in style than what we're used to. New players and the general climate of the game has changed. The general playstyle has transferred to a much more rushed / grindy playstyle over chill. It seemed much more simplistic, and doing tasks such as fighting the Ender Dragon or Wither were much more of a challenge rather than a step in progress in the game. For example, now the Ender Dragon is mostly a fight segue towards Elytra and shulker boxes. I'm curious as to how you feel about the way the player climate has evolved over the years, and whether you think these changes to climate are for the better, or if you feel that people should slow down a bit. Love the show. It's been an absolute staple in doing my work these times. So you, sir, have played Minecraft a lot longer than I have. So I'm wondering if you've noticed any of these shifts that Beyonder is mentioning.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest change came with, as Beyonder pointed out here, the introduction of Elytra and an objective beyond the Ender Dragon, because along with Elytra and shulker boxes, you open up movable inventory and really fast travel throughout not just the overworld, but the Nether as well, and to a certain extent the End, although nobody really builds out in the end super far, and travel in there generally is kind of difficult. I think there is definitely an incentive to play the game faster to get to those objectives, and it's not necessarily something you see all the time in single player, because people can take the world at their own pace. But on multiplayer servers, there is always that feeling of, if I don't go and fight the dragon soon, everybody else is going to get there and claim the shulker boxes and the elytra ahead of me. And then you don't get to have the same challenge of going and fighting the dragon and doing all of that stuff yourself, because on a multiplayer server, more likely than not, people are just going to be selling elytra from a certain point. And so you can make it easy for yourself and buy your way to that level of progression. I think that's been the biggest change, really, to the pace of the game. And before that, the only real reason to kill the Ender Dragon was to say that you had done it and get a trophy item, and then maybe unlock a dimension in which you could do some outer space builds, or farm obsidian, or you could do a couple of other bits and pieces, build an Enderman farm. But then I think with the end actually having additional objectives out there, people want to get to that so they can be at end game sooner, and there is mechanical progression required there. And I joined the game right before that update. So I was, just riding the wave of 1.8 into 1.9 when I started on PC Minecraft, although I'd played the Xbox edition, which felt like it was several versions back from that. And so when I joined the server, it was already in 1.8 when I joined Decidedly Vanilla. They'd already killed the dragon, and I didn't get to do the dragon fight again, because you couldn't respawn the dragon back in those days. There was no crafting end crystals and stuff like that. That all got added in 1.9. So I've definitely seen the focus shift from just being, well, the overworld is where we do everything. There's a bit of Nether hub stuff, but the Nether also doesn't have very much, to a much more even split of activities between dimensions. And effectively, you are denying yourself the content that the end provides until you go there, and then there is a lot more for you to do in the Nether as well. So I feel like the game, if nothing else, has broadened in its scope to the extent that it encourages players to go and seek that stuff out as soon as they want to get hold of it.
Yeah, I definitely feel that I treat the dragon as like a stepping stone.
Yeah.
I know part of that is the way that I play the game and my lack of interest in a boss fight. Like, I don't even like PvE in Minecraft. I do it because I find the survival game is more satisfying, and the farm building and all that kind of stuff. But like, I don't like the dragon fight. I find it tedious. We still have to kill the dragon a few more times in the server, and it's a decent change of pace, some different stream content. It's always funny, there's something unpredictable usually happens, and it usually provides some good content. But like, we've got these, I don't want to call them easy mode towers, but I've got these siege towers in the end that are made of endstone, that are these giant towers that you can just use a water elevator to get to the top of and shoot the regeneration crystals very easily. So we're not even really faced with much of a challenge with the Ender Dragon. It's just a matter of, luck. Do you get, thrown off the cliff into the void, or do you manage to get through it? We just want to open up all the end gateways around the side of it. And then as far as elytras and shulker boxes go, like, every once in a while, we just erase the outer islands. Like, we keep the hub, we keep the main island. We don't touch that. But it's a very easy thing to just go out and erase all of the end islands and regenerate that content. For at least for me, for servers and stuff. And so I definitely treat it like a stepping stone. I don't, I think for me, the Minecraft is still a pretty chill game. I don't necessarily blitz through content, but again, you're going to get different answers from different people because I'm a content creator. So if I blitz through content, if I just rip through a build and mine something out and grind something out in a couple of days, I mean, that could have been a couple of weeks of streams, So I don't, for you, for videos, for content, for Survival Guide too. Like, it's better. I think it's more enjoyable to take your time. But that's also more of a subjective style of play for me. I'm also older. I mean, you and I are both older than the average Minecraft player. So I wonder if that has something to do with it too. Whether I'd be curious to see I mean, I don't think Minecraft is going anywhere in terms of its longevity. So I'd be curious to see if like 15, 16-year-olds that are playing the game now with the influence of games like Fortnite and PUBG and these other fast-paced, online games that bleed over into Minecraft and PvP and the style at which people blitz through Minecraft. I wonder if those people are going to be playing it in the same pace when they're 21, when they're
Yeah.
28. Like I'm curious because we have people now that so Minecraft came out. The beta was what, 2009? I think.
Yeah, I mean, the earliest edition of Minecraft that was published publicly was May 17th, 2009, which
Right.
I only remember the date exactly because May 17th is also my birthday.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, no, it's over 11 years old now.
Yeah. And so people that are 31 were 18. People that are in their mid-20s were under 10, in some cases. So I'm curious as to how they play the game now. So if you're someone that's been playing since beta, and or if you've been even playing in the last since like 1.9 came out, and you're now up to 117 and you're 5 years older, then let us know. Write into the show and let us know, has your play style changed as you are now an adult with less time, and hopefully more chill? Has that influenced the way that you play Minecraft, or do you sit down and still play it like you do when you were 12?
Yeah.
It's an interestingly subjective observation, but also some really interesting data. Like it kind of skirts that, objective subjective way of looking at Minecraft.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to hear from more people about this because, yeah, I can think of a couple of things, especially in more recent developments, that have changed a bit of the landscape as far as the way people play Minecraft now. And a lot of it is related to the YouTube community growing and YouTubers kind of rising to the top of, top of their game and becoming incredibly popular. I'm thinking about the rise of technical Minecraft as a more popular way to play, the construction of things like automated farms and how easy redstone YouTubers and technical YouTubers lay out their tutorials for people now. If you look at folks from, Mumbo to Ilmango, there's a lot of very easy to follow tutorials out there that can, make the game incredibly easy for you in terms of gathering resources and so forth. And a lot of people tend to get to that stage quite quickly because they want to go as big as possible with their Minecraft stuff. And more often than not, people might end up getting bored with that approach because they aren't pacing themselves and they get burnt out building some of these more intensive farms, or they farm all of this stuff just because they know it's possible, but then they don't really have an end goal in mind for what to do with it. But you still find people finding the most efficient way to play, which is often a fairly fast way to play. And then more recently, I think, although it's obviously been going on for a very long time, I think the emergence of speedrunning as a popular form of Minecraft play has, I think, now led to more people rushing through the game because they see some of the people they enjoy watching doing that. There are going to be people who see people beating Minecraft and killing the dragon in, less than 30 minutes. And they think, well, okay, I'm going to emulate that style of play and do that. And whether that's a world that persists, or in the case of speedrunners, usually it's just that world is deleted and they move on to whatever the next attempt is. But you're still going to find that sort of rushing, breathless way of going through the game is appealing to a lot of people, just in terms of the technical execution required for it, but also just getting to that objective and seeing the end credits as fast as possible, and the rush of, maybe being on pace to beat the game faster than you ever have before. So I think Minecraft as a community is so broad that it's very easy to zero in on things like that. And as prominent as they are, and as talked about, as discussed as they are right now, approaches like speedrunning and technical Minecraft are going to be like at the forefront of everyone's minds. But it's important to remember the community is, hundreds of millions of people at this stage, and there are going to be all sorts of people who are taking things at their own pace. Just because that's not necessarily popular right now, there are still people playing the game that way, and absolutely so. If you look at Tinfoil Chef, who's a member of the Hermitcraft server, and compared to the others, his style is incredibly different. He spends a lot of his time branch mining. He's an older dude, and he likes to just play the game at his own pace, acquire resources, and has kind of perfected the branch mining approach to just gathering huge amounts of stuff between episodes. And yeah, he plays the game a lot slower than the other folks on Hermitcraft who are building enormous tree houses and, huge bases and redstone stuff and automatic potion brewers for everything and that kind of stuff. And even within a community like that, you have people who are doing things at a very different pace. So I think the breadth of Minecraft dictates that there is really, while you might see anecdotally, like you said, an approach to the game that is quickening in pace, there are still people who want to play it slowly. The fact is you can do both. Minecraft is a game that allows for such a variety of approaches.
And I think, too, that it's what's important to note, and I believe that Beyonder mentioned this in their email, and the way that they phrased it is that, the generations that I see play the game, to quote their email, and that's the thing. It's like, this is what you're seeing. The amount of people that play Minecraft and generate Minecraft content compared to the broader player base, it's a fraction. So you're looking at the very loud, very visible minority in terms of the folks that are playing at that breakneck speed that seems to be increasing. Whereas I'd be curious if there would be like a survey, of just a larger player base, and just to find out age demographics, the speed at which they play the game, what they like to do, and how they like to play. And sure, it's all going to be personal, but I think there would be probably some trends. And I think that the game is probably still pretty chill across the board when you look at the big picture compared to the Minecraft content creator. Because how much of the Minecraft content creator is less influenced by Minecraft and more influenced by YouTube and the pace of YouTube videos, right? Not so much gameplay in Minecraft, but the information transfer that happens in most YouTube videos and viewer retention and all that kind of stuff. It's an interesting kind of switch back and forth. So that said, if you are starting a new world for a new game, provided it's not for the survival guide, like if you were doing something and say it wasn't a speed run, how would you approach it? Like, would you go straight for the dragon's throat, or would you be given this as the, I'm sure how many times you've started over again in Minecraft, but what would be your approach for playing something new now?
Well, we can take the RTX series as an example of that, because I restarted that recently. It's only 5 episodes in. I've probably spent about 5 or 6 hours total in that world, probably a little bit more. And I'm taking that from the approach of wanting to establish myself in the world first, wanting to build a decent-sized house, acquire resources, acquire tools, equipment, that kind of stuff, and at least get to myself to the point where I have, a couple of pieces of backup equipment in case I die and that kind of thing. And if I'm playing the long game, I'm thinking a lot more about my vision for what I want to build rather than objectives like going and killing the dragon. Killing the dragon has never really been the point of the game for me, I think, the way it is for some people. And that's because I really treat Minecraft more as a building experience than anything else. Even though I've got a more broad approach to gameplay now, I think I'm still, at my heart, a builder. And so, yeah, I find myself much more interested in resource gathering and exploration and that kind of stuff. So I won't think of rushing the dragon right away. It's not convenient, though shulker boxes and elytra are. It's not going to be my immediate focus, where I imagine some people just want the flexibility, because then even if you are a builder, getting elytra and shulker boxes means you can bring everything with you and go and search for the ideal location to start your base instead of compromising on whatever's around you when you start the game to begin with. So I can see a couple of different approaches there. I mean, in your case, you've done a couple of smaller bits and pieces of single-player play, but the Citadel has been your home for the longest time. How about you? What path do you see yourself starting?
Well, and that's the thing. I was thinking about the single-player world that I started specifically with the Nether update, right? Because that was the easiest and quickest way to get into the new Nether content on stream and explore it in a survival situation. And of course, with that particular playthrough, I was rushing to get to the Nether. I wanted a little bit of armor, a little bit of iron, and I wanted, of course, enough obsidian to make a portal and that kind of stuff. And then immediately paid the price of not being ready for the Nether, right? Because I rushed there, and then I got my butt handed to me. And plus, it was new, and I didn't really know what to expect and how to traverse. And I think a little bit of that was also the bleed over of having a 3-year-old world at the time where I had endgame armor, endgame gear, and I was used to being a little OP, compared to having not much armor and very small weapons with no enchants going into the Nether. You realize very quickly it takes a lot more work. You have to be a lot more careful. So it would take a brain shift, but I find that even with that playthrough, my decision making as to what I was going to do next was more about like, well, I'm still a builder at heart, and if I want to do this, then I want either a shulker box or I want quartz, or like my decision to go into the next stage of the game is usually like, this block would be perfect for this. I don't have that yet. Like I need, if that's the case, I need a brewing stand. And like, there's all these different things where like, you want to go to the end to get something, and you're just like, oh wait, I haven't beaten the dragon. That means that when I go to the end, I'm going to have to fight the dragon. So like, there's all these things that kind of creep up in there. Same thing with, just gameplay in general. Like I find that my speed and what I do in the game, you're talking earlier about technical builds, I play until I get to the point where I need a lot of something, and then it's like, okay, do I want to spend hours mining this, or do I want to try to find like a spawner or something? Like, how do I get bone meal? Like, do I want to do all this composting stuff, or do I want to just find a skeleton spawner and set a spawner up immediately? And I find that what I rush to do are the things that I find tedious. So I want an auto crop farm, or I want an auto XP farm, or I want, something that's going to give me materials very quickly. Doesn't necessarily matter what that material is, but I want bone meal so I can grow trees quickly and not have to just clear cut areas and stuff like that. I find that that's what motivates my game speed, is like, what blocks do I need? What blocks can I get quickly? Which will reduce the tedium of like branch mining and stuff. I ran into that actually in my modded playthrough with all of Fabric 3. I was reaching this bottleneck where like all of the mods needed basic Minecraft ingredients like redstone and lapis and iron. I'm just like, crap. I've been so wrapped up in this mod and exploring this new mod, I haven't started a mine. And I'm many days into this Minecraft playthrough and I didn't have a branch mine. So I find that I'm definitely block motivated. Like a food driven human, I'm a block driven Minecraft player.
Looking at Beyonder's email here, just about back in the older times in beta and 1.0, I was curious and went to the Minecraft wiki to look up when some features got added to the game. And 1.0, like the first initial release of Java, was the first time you had a dragon to fight. Nether fortresses started to appear, stuff like that. And I've gone through a couple of changelogs, and just like the history and how it's documented on the Minecraft wiki is so great. There's just like a table of when features were added, when they were modified, when any changes happened to this stuff. And looking at it, upside down stairs weren't even added until 1.2.1.
Wow.
So I think the reason that you see a difference in pace and people rushing to certain objectives is just that there's anything at all to do in the game now. Like you look at the amount of blocks that people want, and if you don't want to build your house just out of oak wood and cobblestone, you have to play at a different pace, because you have to go searching for biomes that are going to give you other things. If you want to start a house and not build with just the materials that are around you when you spawn in, then you're going to need to go further afield. And yeah, I think that is potentially why. If you have, the foresight to think of like, I'm going to build something out of prismarine in whatever iteration of the world you happen to be in, you're going to need a guardian farm for that, which means rushing an ocean monument before you can really start to build the thing that you've had any kind of focus on. So, yeah, I think since the 1.0 days of Java Edition, people have just been given more and more to do. And maybe that has balanced the pace of things, but I really feel like the pace of things has warped and shifted a little bit. The breadth of the game has expanded to the point where rushing these objectives that might have been the end game for people in 1.0 is still just the beginning of the game for everybody else. That is probably where we're going to wrap up this episode of the Spawn Chunks, but once again, would love to get some more emails about this discussion topic. I find it fascinating to hear anybody's history with Minecraft at all, so let us know via email. In the meantime, you can find more information about the show and links to some of the stuff we've talked about today at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show is composed by me. The Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you're getting some value out of the show, please consider putting some value back in. You can visit patreon.com/thespawnchunks to join our community. Pledging at any level there gets you an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat. You can listen to the show recorded live, and it gets us closer to our next goal, which is having a monthly Minecraft audio hangout, where our patrons and us would just join a chat much like this one, and we'd be able to discuss what everyone had been doing in their own Minecraft lives, the way we do at the top of the show every week. We're currently at 225 patrons, which is up from last week, and special thanks go out to our content engineers. We're welcoming a new content engineer patron this week. Fazu Battlecaster has joined their ranks alongside General Patton 82, Greener Canuck, Hunter 555, Jumbo Sale, and Yitz. Thank you for your support on this episode.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. It's free. You can find us at The Spawn Chunks on Twitter and Instagram to share those posts around, but a personal recommendation is by far the best way to share the podcast. Just poke a friend in the arm from a safe distance and tell them about The Spawn Chunks and where they can go to listen. Where might that be? You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and on YouTube. Really, wherever you can find a podcast. You can email the show, just like Prowl and Beyonder, at spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. The RSS feed is linked on the spawnchunks.com, and the patron-only RSS feed is on the Patreon page, and that's where you can listen to the render distance, the extended version of the podcast.
My name is Jonny, but online I go by Pixelriffs. You can find most of what I do at youtube.com/Pixelriffs, where I attempt to make sense of this crazy and wonderful game in a series called the Minecraft Survival Guide. I also stream 3 days a week on Twitch, where I do behind-the-scenes work for the Survival Guide, building more biome dioramas, and I'm also planning on starting a 100% run of Stardew Valley, just for something a little bit different. I'm also the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap. You can find that project through a quick search on YouTube. And aside from that, I'm at Pixelriffs on both Twitter and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
Everything that I'm doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio, is at joelduggan.com. You can listen to my other podcast, The Sizzle Cafe, at thesizzlecafe.com. That's all about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment. And you can follow me on social media at Joel Duggan. Twitch, same thing, same name. I'm really easy to find. Been playing a lot of Minecraft lately, and look to that to continue.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, but it's moving one block at a time.